Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at an excellent book which has come to us from Edward Elgar Publishing Limited. It's a family publishing business based in Cheltenham and elsewhere, and they produce some very high quality books for us as commentators, researchers and practitioners in law. Our purpose with these reviews is to only look at books which are of high quality benefit to us, so they get a high star rating, and we hope that they are books that appear in the journals, the legal journals, and on the websites which we put them on. Now, this is a relatively short review that I'm doing of this particular book, which I shall show you in a moment. It's called Trade Secrecy and International Transactions, Law and Practice. It's been written by two people, Elizabeth A. Rowe and Sharon K. Sandine. The fact that you've got initials indicates which perhaps country they may come from, but the book is nevertheless a very, very good book. It's available both as a hardback and as an e-book, and you can also access it by the Elgar Online system, and all the details I'll show you in a moment. It's part of the Elgar Intellectual Property Law and Practice series, and when we're talking about trade secrecy and international transactions, it is directed at IP in particular. And we've given it a general title for this review of Another Brilliant Best Friend from Edward Elgar, covering IP matters, and very much in our view a book of today. And what we're going to we'll talk about the book in a moment very briefly, and it'll be very much part of what's actually in the general blurb. But let's look at the book first of all. It's a hardback, nice blue cover. There is the spine, which you can see there, and then the back actually has a reasonable amount of information, much of what I'm going to discuss in this short review. The book itself runs, it's quite a heavy book surprisingly, runs to nearly 340 pages. You can see the index is actually not by page numbering but by paragraph numbering. It's quite important to know that, to find what you may be looking for when you're going through. There are, of course, at the back of the book a number of appendices. So you've got the index, which actually starts on page 323, and then before that you've got a number of appendices which are there. Now if we go to the front of the book, you can see the front. That is the actual Elgar Intellectual Property Law and Practice series, which is listed there, and you can see a number of books in the series so far. Then you've got the front page of the book, and both people are from the United States of America. Elizabeth is from Florida, and Sharon is from the Hamlin University School of Law. That's the information about the online side if you're interested in finding out about it, and you can see how the book is structured. It's in two parts, part one being TRIPS requirements and the fundamentals of US trade secret law, and then part two, overview of trade secret law in select countries, and then there are two appendices which you can see, and then the index at the back, and so a total of 10 chapters. There's a preface, there's an extended table of contents, so you should be able to find what you're looking for quite quickly. They're looking specifically at Article 39 of TRIPS. Then we go to the next part of the detailed index there. Then there's a preface which says, "We are pleased to offer this book as a concise and authoritative source on trade secrecy in international transactions. It is intended as a starting point for research and as a handbook for understanding and approaching the laws pertaining to trade secrets and confidential or undisclosed information throughout the world." And you can see how important that is for the international global community. Then we have some acknowledgements, and then we actually then have abbreviations, very helpful in this particular area. Anything involving IP, I find it's useful to have some abbreviations explained. Then the table of cases from different jurisdictions, I hasten to add. Table of legislation, again from different jurisdictions, a little bit more. And then what we do is we get into the book itself, and you will see with the chapters that you've got an index at the top, which is quite helpful, a very short one, telling you what this book is about. And it talks right at the beginning about the book. Ask any business, large or small, to identify one of its most important assets, and it's bound to identify its confidential and proprietary information or trade secrets. And that, of course, is that. Remember that if you ever have a contract with a company, there's always going to be a clause in the contract of employment normally about that. So you can see how it's on. What you do is you have the paragraph numbering here, which is when you're looking, it's actually on the left-hand side. So you can find things that way, and of course there is the page numbering at the bottom. Then if we go through, there's a reasonable amount of footnoting, which you can see there. And then right at the back you have different countries which are covered, of course. Then what you do is you have the two appendices, which are fairly substantial. And there's Appendix 1 and then Appendix 2 follows on from that. One thing I would point out is that when you are looking at the overview of select countries, they're not actually mentioned in Part 2 in the overall contents section, but if you go to the second part, you will then find there is mention of certain countries there in Part 2. And then if you actually look at the actual headings at the top, you will find the specific countries mentioned there, depending on what you're specifically looking for, by way of the way in which they do business. It's a very interesting book, and one that I hadn't given too much thought to until I actually saw it, because it's an area where we take it for granted that there will be quite substantial, you can use the word secrecy or binding of confidentiality, because most people today, when they enter any form of contract, will have some confidentiality clause in it. And this book, I think, tries to go some way to explain how, what the law and practice is concerning trade secrecy itself and the international transactions which take place. And as I've indicated, that's because of the nature of where we are today with our systems. Now, what Edward Elgar say about this book, which I think is quite valuable, is that it provides a valuable source of information on the law and practice of trade secrecy in international business transactions, and it gives concise but authoritative insight into international trade secret harmonisation efforts and the trade secret laws of many countries. Britain is obviously quite often accused of being extremely secretive, but I think most countries are. They want to keep confidential information to themselves, and you can understand the purpose behind that is to protect their business, to protect their employers, and to protect their country and what they're doing. So it is understandable, but the point that I think is coming out of this is that there is an attempt to standardise the system. So let me just conclude by saying in this short review that Rowe and Sandine show that the trade secret law in the United States of America that they actually have, the actual laws, are promoted as the international standard for trade secret protection. I think that's right to say, and I think that's a very important point for the book. And it's also a detailed explanation of the scope and limits of trade secret law in the United States, presented here alongside practical guidance on how business can enhance trade secret protection while engaging in global commerce. And that's basically where we are with the book. Quick one again, just to show you. There's the front, the spine, and then the back. There are some quotes about this book from various people, again from academics primarily, because it is an academic work. And as I say, when we started off about the book, if we go into the book itself, you can, for instance, one area that will be of interest, I think, to many people, criminal prosecution for trade secret misappropriation. Again, sometimes the state will wield fairly substantial powers to make sure that things are protected. And if you consider some of the problems that we've had in the past, it's understandable. Again, it goes straight back to TRIPS agreements, and that's really the subhead for this, in my view. And then if we go to the back, as I say, country overviews, there are a whole range of different countries. Brazil features very prominently, China, Japan, and so forth, Mexico. So there's quite a wide range, and as I've indicated, the appendix, which is really very important here, is comparison of the UTSA and the proposed EU Trade Secret Directive. Now again, you can see how things are moving quite quickly in this area at the moment with regard to the European Union itself and other different groupings. I'd like to thank the authors very much indeed, and of course I would also express again my thanks to Edward Elgar for producing these excellent books. We can't do our jobs basically without having this sort of work available, and I'm extremely grateful to all of them for being so helpful in giving us, certainly in the academic legal community, such a lot of help and support. It's greatly appreciated. So thank you to everybody concerned for another excellent book from Elgar. Bye-bye.